Today we tackle the hot-button issue of building the southern border wall to keep illegal immigrants out. But this is going to be from a unique perspective. Unique in the sense that this border wall is not along the southern border. You see, this border wall that I'm talking about stretches northward, New Hampshire to be precise. In this episode, we'll look into the debate ignited by the 2024 Republican presidential candidates who are shining a spotlight on the often overlooked border with Canada. Welcome to That's Life, I swear. This podcast is about life's happenings in this world that conjure up such words as intriguing, frightening, life-changing, inspiring, and more. I'm Rick Barron, your host. That said, here's the rest of this story. Now try to imagine, if you will, a very picturesque landscape just across the Canadian border, where the Border Patrol Station stands less than about a mile from the New Hampshire state line. Now, it's here that a group of immigrants made their way into the United States in September of 2023, setting off a series of events that would shape the discourse on immigration during the recent New Hampshire Republican primary in January of 2024. A crackdown on migration at the northern border occurred months ahead of the primary, with Governor Chris Sununu allocating a staggering $1.4 million for enhanced border security. Joining forces with Republican frontrunner Nikki Haley, they advocated for more than just a border wall, igniting a seismic shift in the immigration policy landscape. Now, to be fair, Haley wasn't the only Republican setting her sights on the northern end of New Hampshire. Before dropping out of the primaries in January of 2024, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis supported building a barrier along troubled spots in the Canadian-U.S. border. Now, that troubled spot that we're talking about is about 58 miles long at the tip of New Hampshire. Vivek Ramaswamy, the tech entrepreneur who ended his bid for the GOP nomination as well, also called for a northern border wall. At the third Republican primary debate on November the 8th of 2023, Ramaswamy made his stance very clear. He went on to say, and I quote, "I'm the only candidate on the stage, as far as I'm aware, who has actually visited the northern border. There was enough fentanyl that was captured just on the northern border last year to kill 3 million Americans. So we've got to just skate to where the puck is going, not just where the puck is." Well, I tell you, I'm not sorry to see this guy dropping out of the race. I wonder how he came up with his calculation of 3 million Americans. What a blowhard. Now, for the most part, and quite surprisingly, Donald Trump is largely steering clear of the northern border debate. However, Trump continues to remain a major advocate for enhanced barriers at the U.S.-Mexico border. But here's a twist. Despite the fervor among Republican leaders, it seems the majority of New Hampshire residents aren't losing any sleep over security along this 58-mile border with Canada. A recent poll suggests that while 80% consider the influx of immigrants a concern, only about 36% express worry about the northern border. They could care less. In a bold move to enhance border security, Governor Sununu's Northern Border Alliance Task Force made headlines with its ambitious initiatives. Launched in October of 2023, the task force allocated a staggering 10,000 patrol hours, which is a stark departure from the meager 600 to about 720 hours that they had funded before by the federal government under Operation Stone Garden. Attorney General John Formella, standing alongside Sununu during a press conference, emphasized the state's commitment to combating illegal activity along the remote border region, empowering state and local law enforcement to detect and deter any breaches. These statistics paint a stark picture of escalating enforcement efforts. Arrests within the Swanton sector, located in the northwest of New Hampshire, surged to unprecedented levels, skyrocketing from a mere 365 in 2021 to 6,900 during the last fiscal year. During the month of October, there was a huge spike, with nearly 1,100 migrants apprehended. Analysts speculate that this surge may stem from a loophole in Canadian visa requirements, enabling migrants from countries like Mexico to circumvent the congested southern border, where enforcement activities dwarf those seen along the northern frontier by a staggering 13-fold. Yet, as the debate rages on, The ACLU and immigrant advocacy groups criticized the task force as a fear tactic, labeling the situation as a manufactured crisis. Lawsuits and settlement discussions started, revealing the underlying tensions surrounding the perceived need for increased border security. Expressing deep concerns, Gillis Bissonnette, the legal director of the ACLU of New Hampshire, voiced apprehension regarding the potential repercussions of the border task force. He raised poignant questions about the specter of increased racial profiling, particularly in a region renowned for its outdoor recreational pursuits. He underscored the complexities of distinguishing between innocent hikers and migrants, adding a layer of uncertainty to the enforcement landscape. With a tone tinged with apprehension, Eva Castillo, the director of the New Hampshire Alliance for Immigrants and Refugees, paints a chilling picture of the political landscape leading up to the New Hampshire primary. In her sober assessment, she reflected on the discourse surrounding the initiatives that could exacerbate the blight of immigrants, including herself, already dealing with the fringes of society's acceptance within the state. Amongst the noise of campaign promises, Castillo's words resonate with a sense of foreboding, highlighting a narrative of persecution and marginalization that looms ominously over the immigrant community. In a bone-chilling saga of legislative upheaval, Castillo and her fellow advocates find themselves entrenched in a battle against draconian state measures. For years, they have waged a relentless struggle against proposed laws aimed at eradicating sanctuary policies from the city jurisdictions. Their efforts continue to be a desperate bid to safeguard the immigrant population. Yet, as the current legislative session unfolds, a new wave of oppression emerges, threatening to engulf their hard-won progress in a tidal wave of injustice. Now, proposed bills loom ominously on the horizon, each one more sinister in the arsenal of anti-immigrant fever. Among them stands a diabolical decree demanding that federal funds earmarked for refugee settlements to be diverted to prioritize the interests of U.S. citizens, a chilling testament to the callous disregard for those seeking asylum on American shores. But the fear doesn't end there. Legislators are also entertaining a nightmarish proposal maintaining the implementation of E-Verify, a flawed system riddled with errors that cast a shadow of suspicion over lawful workers, condemning them to the ranks of the unauthorized. Another insidious bill seeks to strip undocumented immigrants of their last hope of mobility, making it a criminal offense to operate a vehicle without a state license in the unforgiving terrain of New Hampshire, where sanctuary is but a distant dream. In the face of such hard tactics, Castillo and her allies stand as committed guardians of justice, their resolve inflexible in the face of tyranny. But as the shadows lengthen and the specter of oppression looms ever larger, their struggle takes on a desperate sense of urgency, a battle for survival in a landscape fraught with peril and betrayal. Now, as the odd makers had it written, former President Donald Trump easily won New Hampshire's primary, seizing command of the race for the Republican nomination and making a November rematch against President Joe Biden feel all the more inevitable. Now, the result for sure was a setback for former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who finished second despite investing significant time and financial resources in a state famous for its independent streak. She's the last major challenger after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis ended his presidential bid, thus allowing her to campaign as the sole alternative to Trump. In a scathing denouncement, President Biden and dissenting voices within Trump's own party rose in unified condemnation following his incendiary remarks at a campaign rally in Durham, New Hampshire. Trump's inflammatory rhetoric, likening immigrants to a toxic contagion, infiltrating the very veins of the nation, sent shockwaves through the political landscape, invoking disturbing echoes of historical atrocities. With chilling resolve, Trump doubled down on his pledge for a draconian crackdown on immigration, vowing to unleash a wave of mass detentions and deportations should he reclaim the presidency. His ominous agenda, underscored by sweeping restrictions targeting Muslim major countries, portends a dark and threatening future for those seeking refuge within America's shores. The topic of immigration is very focused on the southern border of the United States rather than the northern front. The entrenched toxicity and volatility of the national dialogue on immigration appears insurmountable, casting a shadow of despair over the prospects for meaningful change. Now, people in New Hampshire aren't screaming to high heaven for the building of a 58-mile wall to protect them. Not sure why the Republicans are, but then we're talking about the GOP that has been caught up in the spell of Trump. And most recently, the MAGA mob is now turning their focus to their leader's last remaining political rival, Taylor Swift. But that's another story. A much bigger concern for people in New Hampshire centers around drugs, especially fentanyl, being transported across the border. Last year, federal agents confiscated 687 pounds of drugs across the tri-state border sector that includes New Hampshire, but no fentanyl, according to CBP data. More than 4 times as many drugs were seized at the U.S.-Mexico border than at the U.S.-Canadian border. CBP spokesman Jacqueline Wasilak said more than 90% of fentanyl seized by CBP is brought through ports of entry along the southern border. Republicans advocating for a border wall along the northern border, similar to the one proposed for the southern border, typically cite concerns about national security and immigration control. Now, they argue that such barriers would help prevent unauthorized entry into the United States, including individuals who may pose security threats such as terrorists, criminals, and traffickers. Additionally, they may assert that strengthening border security is essential for enforcing immigration laws and protecting American jobs and resources. However, it's essential to note that opinions on this matter can vary widely within the Republican Party, and often perspectives differ on the necessity, the feasibility, and the effectiveness of such a proposal. So what can we learn from this story? What's the takeaway? As a nation, we continue to navigate the intricacies of this unfolding saga, exploring perspectives from residents, activists, and politicians, from concerns about drugs, particularly fentanyl, to the views on law enforcement presence. We uncovered the layers of a story that goes beyond borders, a tale of political maneuvering, public perception, and the very essence of security in a changing world. Well, there you go, my friends. That's life, I swear. For further information regarding the material covered in this episode, I invite you to visit my website, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, for show notes calling out key pieces of content mentioned and the episode transcript. As always, I thank you for listening and your interest. Be sure to subscribe here or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. See you soon.